Hey, uh, happy Friday, y'all. I'm going to take this hat off in a second, but I like this hat. It's got my little Kermit tea drinking Kermit on here, and it's also filthy because it's been through the wash a bunch of times and it's falling apart. So let's take that off. I want to talk today about content engineering, and I want to talk about this question: do I need a content engineer? I'm starting to have clients ask us about this, have outreach mention this to us, like people are coming in on our site, mention content engineering. Obviously, a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are also not talking about it. So if you don't know what I am talking about, don't worry about it too much. We'll talk about it today. Okay, cool. There we go. I just turn off that little badge from StreamYard because I already have my name right there and my email address right there, so I don't need it. So I want to talk about what it is, and I'll sort of describe it very generally. And then I want to talk about how you could think about content engineering. My goal by the end of the next 10 minutes or so is to get you familiar with the idea and also get you thinking about whether it's something you need or not, but also get you to think about it a little more expansively, because I don't know that I think you need to be super doctrinaire about what it is. So if I do a quick Google search right now, and I'm going to share my screen, I think I'm going to share my screen. Awesome. Okay, that's good. Let's get that open. I just had it a second ago, and let's add it to the stage. And you're going to see as soon as I add this to the stage, there we go. Content engineer. What's a content engineer? Who's writing about it? Here's Jasper. Here's Wikipedia, which is really interesting. Yeah, there's some people in here kind of trying to make this a thing. That's good. I'm going to take a look at this Wikipedia article later, but there's that. What is content engineering? Because AirOps is working on owning that term. Lots and lots of stuff here. And then let me also see if I can find there you go. So there's some people are starting to post about it too, which is kind of interesting. So what do we mean by this phrase content engineer? I think there's still conversations that we're having about it, but in general, it seems to mean somebody who is able to think about content with a systems sort of lens. And what that implies is somebody who's able to write, probably, or at least who's able to recognize good writing, who has some taste, some ability to connect the ideas of your product and the data and the assets and all the things that you do as a company to connect it to words that people are using and questions that they're trying to answer and topics that they want to learn about. So really, that's what content engineering in some important ways is about. It's about this idea of like, okay, there's a person who has both of these things. And the analogy is pretty straightforward, I think, to marketing operations, as somebody who has done a lot of stuff in content, but has also done a lot of stuff in marketing operations, sales operations, analytics, other things like that. I think there's an analogy here, which is sometimes, not all places, but sometimes your marketing ops person is somebody who's in charge of your email strategy. Not always, not that frequently anymore, but sometimes that person is that person. And there is a requirement there to both understand the system side and set up the system side. And also there's this program that they're running. So that's kind of a way to think about it. Another way to think about it is we've sort of seen the rise of the GTM engineer, the go-to-market engineer. And that person is kind of a little bit related to growth marketing. And we're talking about, what are the systems that we engineer so we can outbound efficiently. And so we can do there might be all kinds of other things involved. So it's kind of taking the right brain and putting it together with the left brain, but it's also bringing a systems view to an area of marketing that previously has not had a super system-y view. So that's what a kind of content engineer is. And some of the things that they might do are they might be required to write things or edit things or manage an editorial calendar. It could be part of it, but also what they're in charge of is We're going to keep everything updated on the site. We're going to do well in SEO and GEO, and we're going to measure that. We're going to add FAQs. We're going to potentially make sure the website is technically up to snuff. We're going to build the AI infrastructure for generating lots of content and scale and seeing what's working and what isn't. So that's definitely a part of the role. So that's kind of an overview of what the content engineer is. And let me see real quick if I can get, maybe I can't do this, but if I can find a specific blog post, and let me, I'll see if I can find one as we're kind of talking here. So this has been the subject of a lot of conversation, and there have been some cool blog posts on this recently, including this article by Ryan Law, who runs content marketing at Ahrefs. And I'm going to add my browser back to the stage, and then I'm going to share Ryan's post here. And he has a good summary, as does Josh Spilker, who also wrote a very similar post, which is, it's an AI native content role to focus on systems thinking using AI to scale up content output and increase quality. So that really is emphasizing not so much the editorial side, but emphasizing the systems piece of this. Bridging the gap between content marketing and technical AI, scaling written content production, safeguarding. So again, this is where you kind of have the taste piece and you also have the systems piece. Okay. And then Ryan brings up a lot of points here about what it could include and not include. And, should you publish 1,000 programmatic landing pages per week? Do you want quality or quantity? And what are we really enabling here? And then Josh at AirOps kind of also posts about this, about how these things are actually linked, and you need experts who do both AI and marketing. And so I encourage you to check these out, these articles, and look for Josh on LinkedIn and look for the things that AirOps is posting, because there's a lot of good conversation there. What I said at the beginning of this was that my goal is to introduce you to what a content engineer is and some of those perspectives. And it's also to help you think a little bit more expansively about what the role could actually be and not get too stuck in, do I need this or not, or what's the title or what isn't the title. So in order to do that, I want to talk about how we think about content engineering with our clients. And fundamentally, the unlock that we think there is that AI lets you treat content as structured data, as sort of structured data, as machine understandable data, so that we can add other outputs using that content. So in a similar way that I would say, here's 30 and here's 10, and ask the machine, what is 30 divided by 10? Oh, it's 3. I define a calculation. I can do something sort of similar with language, which is pretty amazing. And the other, now, of course, there's, quality is not a question when it comes to math, although we could talk about that. But the other piece of this that I think is helpful to think of as an analogy is HubSpot. So here's our very simple HubSpot workflow. Let's go back here. This is Aircule's workflow. When somebody submits a thing on our site, what do? Oh, we do, we send a Slack notification, we send an email, we set some lifecycle stages, we do a bunch of other stuff as well. That's great. Now you can do that with content. If you are familiar with HubSpot workflows, now you can do something very similar with content. You can do things like, I have a piece of content, turn it into an email. I have a piece of content, turn it into another article. Get data about how content is performing, surface specific pieces of content that you want to do things with, and then update those articles. All of these things are now possible, and that's the real unlock. And I think a systems thinking piece is actually required now. I think some content folks have had that the whole time, but it is more important. And then there's a couple of other things that you get by being able to think about content engineering or think about systems thinking. So if you think about content now in terms of your system, you can start to build things like workflows that do baseline work for you, take that off your plate and free you up to do things that are more interesting, the more creative stuff. So an example of that would be, I'll just show you the Aircule app real quick. This is our app. You can sign up for it. It's free, aircule.co. And I will share my screen. This is our library, our data. Here's a post that I have about how to filter by page in Google Analytics 4. You can see it's starting to lose traffic. Now, a lot of that is probably AI reviews. It's getting some LLM traffic, which is the little purple line down here. This is all data, which you can't see. Now you can see it. This is all data from Google Analytics 4. So it's the same data you would see on our GA account. But the point is that like I can build a workflow that goes in and updates a bunch of these automatically. And in the Airql app, one of the things that we do is we show you, oh, hey, here are all your declining pages. We kind of categorize those for you. Or we categorize your star pages where you might want to do something else with them. Or we have these sloths and wallflowers and lemons. Go check it out and I'll explain what all these things are. But we can define these groups of content and then build AI workflows to do stuff with them. Well, Justin, what do you mean by building AI workflows to do stuff with them? Okay, so let's take a look at exactly what I'm talking about. Hold on, I'm gonna get a screen open here to show you. Gonna get rid of that. And here is a workflow. I know you can't see it quite yet. Actually, let's do this. Let's do this cross-link adder here. Okay. And edit workflow. Okay. So I'm going to show you an AirOps instance. And what you're going to see is a workflow that does a bunch of things. We'll share this tab instead. And one of the things this does is you put in a URL, it gets the primary keyword for the URL. It does a search for that. It grabs a Google Doc. It goes, finds all the FAQs related to that article. It reads them out, and then it pushes that change, perhaps even all the way to an integration. So you're taking an article, and maybe you get that out of the Airql app because you're segmenting your content in some way. You're taking that, you're putting it through this set of steps where you're scraping and finding questions and finding cross-links, and then you're outputting it back to Sanity in this example, or you're outputting it back to whatever your CMS is. So that is the engineering part of this. And you can handle that baseline now semi-automatically, and the tooling will continue to get better and easier. But another application for this, let's look at this workflow. One moment. Here is a workflow. We use N8N with most of our clients. And here's a workflow that goes in, gets a bunch of topics, does deep research on each one, writes articles on all those topics, and then pushes them back to the CMS. Well, what are the topics in this case? Oh, the topics here might be, here's 10 articles about different compliance standards and how, our client helps companies deal with those compliance standards and match those in their particular space, whatever it is. So first I said that the content engineering piece was thinking about things in terms of systems. Then I said you can segment your content using all kinds of different segments, I suppose, so different lists, different criteria. That's the word I was looking for. You can segment using different criteria. This is declining, this is going up, this is doing whatever. And then you can attach workflows to those segments. So I'm going to do this with this, I'm going to do this with that, so I'm going to do this with that, so whatever it is. I'm going to update these, I'm going to take these down, I'm going to cross-link these, I'm going to do whatever. You can run that on semi-autopilot. So that's, again, the systems thing. But then you can even extend that technology to be like, oh, here's an interesting topic that we haven't written about yet. Let's get all that stuff written. And one of the things that Ryan Law says, oh, this is bad. I mean, I don't want to overstate what he's saying, but this is not good. That's the same thing. But, and he's right. Like, you could end up producing a lot of slop this way, but you could also end up covering a lot of surface area that you wouldn't otherwise be able to cover and free yourself up to also do the more interesting things. So I'm going to show you another thing, which is what we call an LLM assist. When we do an LLM assist is we have a high context input, and we can use an LLM to produce an article to help us cover surface area we would not otherwise be able to cover. So this is an article. It's okay. It's not amazing. It requires some editing, but it's this versus 8 hours, 10 hours, 2 days, 3 days creating something from scratch was what we had to do before, so it would never get done. Or this. What is this? This is dry infrastructure as code on AWS. This wasn't written by an LLM. And my point is that written content as opposed to generated content is still a very, very important part of the system. You need it in order to build the other stuff. You need this, and this is, humans are going to notice. There was a great report that came out from Graphite this week where they talked about how content that is detected as AI generated tends not to be cited as much. Totally fair. So this is still an important part of the system. So what content engineering lets you do is automate what you can automate. And let's just take this one step further to something I alluded before to as a use case, which is I wrote this thing. Here's a workflow that scrapes my latest blog post and automatically drafts a social post. And then somebody edits it and approves it, and it automatically goes out. Because all of these things are now things you can automate precisely because machines can now treat language as structured data as understandable in a sense. I'm using my biggest scare quotes here, as understandable in a sense. So this is not touched by an LLM, but the point is that we have this new dial now that lets you dial up and down quality and speed. You can work with it in a lot of different ways. It's not just we're going to generate 1,000 things that are obviously AI, or we're not going to do it at all. You can do these different pieces of the system, and that can all be part of your system. And if you think about content engineering, all of these can be things that you do a little of, that you do a lot of, you do editorial, you balance it for what you can. But AI lets you cover a lot of ground that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to, and it lets you automate a lot of that stuff, or try to automate, work on automating, make progress on automating a lot of stuff that we don't really need to pay attention to. And what I think is going to happen, or don't need to pay so much attention to, I think what is going to happen is that just like a lot of brands run branded search ads and they pay Google for the privilege of showing up for their own name, I think a lot of companies are going to need to do some pretty basic content workflows, because one of the things we work on, for example, is competitor stuff. And it's not the most amazing. We have ways of pulling in PMM data and getting things approved and making sure we're using things that are factual and true to the brand. There are ways to do that. But if we generate 100 pages or even 10 pages that compare all of our competitors to each other, those are going to show up for some searches for people who are doing those comparisons and haven't thought of us yet, or us compared to other people, or different feature sets, or all of those things. And I think what might happen is, just like you would have a system that includes these automated parts because you have to, because everybody's doing it. You don't want to not show up for a search that includes yourself. That might be part of the game here too. And then the other thing it lets you do is experiment. So I showed you that spreadsheet that had a whole bunch of ideas on it. And you can try ideas, see how Google reacts, see how your customers react, see what ranks, what doesn't rank, and then work off that. So I'm going to wrap up here, but content engineering, do you need to hire a content engineer? You don't need to hire a content engineer. You do need to start thinking about your content as a system. And you will want to start automating some parts of it, if at all possible, just like we don't hand send emails anymore. We use HubSpot. Do you need to do that today? No, but it's something you need to think about. If you have a large enough team and you have a spot for a content engineer, great. And they might help you learn a lot. Now, the other thing is we're still pretty early in this. So I don't think we really know exactly what the role looks like and how it works and all that stuff. But do you need to hire a content engineer? No, but please think expansively about what these sorts of things can do to improve your ability to connect your ideas, your product, your features, your data, your community, your brand, all of that stuff to artifacts that people can discover if they don't know about you, learn, and then enter your buying funnel. And think about the ways that this can be applied to creating these high performance, high velocity content systems, which is absolutely where we're going. And marketing is going to need a big reset in the next couple of years. And we can talk about what that means maybe on the next live stream, or maybe not. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. All right. Thanks, y'all. Let me know any comments. Send me a DM. Send me an email. I do use comments in these. A lot of the things that I talk about are based on comments, ideas I've gotten from other people. So yeah, see ya.